In the heart of Central Asia, hidden between vast deserts and ancient trade routes, stood a city so magnificent that travelers believed it was not built by humans, but by dreams themselves. This was Samarkand, a city of blue domes, golden mosaics, and towering minarets that shimmered under the sun like a jewel in the desert. For centuries, it was one of the most important cities in the world, a crossroads of culture, trade, and power along the legendary Silk Road. Merchants from China, Persia, India, and the Middle East passed through its gates, bringing silk, spices, knowledge, and ideas. But Samarkand was not always a city of beauty and glory. Its story is also one of destruction, conquest, and rebirth. And at the center of this transformation was one of history's most powerful and feared conquerors, Timur, also known as Tamerlane. Born in 1336 near Samarkand, Timur would rise from a tribal warrior to a ruler whose empire stretched across Asia, from India to the Middle East. But unlike many conquerors, Timur did not just want power. He wanted legacy. He wanted to build something so extraordinary that the world would never forget his name. And for that, he chose Samarkand. When Timur made Samarkand his capital in the late 14th century, the city began to transform. What was once a regional center became the heart of a vast empire, a symbol of wealth, culture, and artistic brilliance. Timur ordered the construction of grand mosques, palaces, and madrasas. He brought artisans, architects, and scholars from across his empire, often by force, to work on his vision. The result was breathtaking. Buildings covered in turquoise tiles, massive domes that touched the sky, and intricate patterns that reflected the highest level of craftsmanship. Samarkand became a masterpiece, but behind this beauty was a darker story. Timur's empire was built through brutal conquests. Cities were destroyed, and entire populations were wiped out. His campaigns in places like Delhi in 1398 and Baghdad in 1401 left a trail of destruction. Yet the wealth taken from these conquests flowed into Samarkand, funding its transformation into a city unlike any other. It was a paradox, a city of beauty built on war, a jewel of civilization created through destruction. And this is what makes Samarkand's story so fascinating, because it is not just about architecture or power, it is about ambition. The ambition of one man who wanted to leave behind something eternal, but history is never permanent. After Timur's death in 1405, his empire began to decline. Over time, Samarkand lost its political importance. Trade routes shifted and new powers emerged. The city that once stood at the center of the world slowly faded into the background. Its grand buildings remained, but its glory began to disappear. Today, Samarkand still stands, a reminder of what once was. Its blue domes still shine under the sun, its monuments still tell stories of a golden age. But the question remains, was Samarkand truly a paradise on earth, or was it a monument to power built at any cost? This is the story of the lost splendor of Samarkand, a story of rise of glory and of inevitable decline. Long before the rise of Timur, long before Samarkand became a city of blue domes and imperial ambition, it was already one of the most important places in the ancient world. The story of Samarkand begins more than 500 years ago, around the 7th century BCE, when it was known as Marakanda, a thriving settlement in the region of Sogdiana. Located in what is now modern-day Uzbekistan, Samarkand sat at a perfect crossroads, a natural meeting point between East and West. This strategic position would shape its destiny, because Samarkand was not just a city, it was a gateway. A gateway that connected the great civilizations of China, Persia, India, and the Mediterranean world. And through this gateway flowed one of the most important trade networks in human history, the Silk Road. The Silk Road was not a single road, but a vast network of trade routes stretching thousands of kilometers. It carried silk, spices, gold, precious stones, and ideas across continents, and at the center of this network stood Samarkand. Merchants arrived from distant lands, bringing goods and stories from across the world. Chinese silk traders, Persian merchants, Indian spice dealers, and even Roman envoys passed through its bustling markets. The city became rich, not just in wealth, but in culture. Different languages were spoken in its streets, different religions were practiced side by side, and different traditions blended into something unique. This diversity made Samarkand one of the most cosmopolitan cities of its time. The people of Sogdiana, known as Sogdians, played a crucial role in this trade network. They were skilled merchants and diplomats, acting as middlemen between civilizations. Their influence extended far beyond Samarkand. In fact, Sogdian traders were known to travel as far as China, where they established communities and helped spread ideas and culture. But Samarkand's importance was not just economic, it was also strategic, and because of this, it became a target for powerful empires. One of the most famous moments in its early history came in 329 BC, when Alexander the Great arrived at its gates. At the time, Samarkand was part of the Achaemenid Persian Empire. Alexander, in his campaign to conquer Persia, captured the city after fierce resistance. According to historical accounts, he was deeply impressed by Samarkand's beauty and strength. Some even say he declared, "Everything I have heard about Marakanda is true, except that it is even more beautiful than I imagined." But like many conquerors, Alexander's arrival brought both change and destruction. After his conquest, Samarkand became part of the Hellenistic world. Greek culture, art, and architecture began to influence the city. However, this period did not last forever. Over the centuries, Samarkand changed hands many times. It came under the control of different empires, including the Seleucids, the Greco, Bactrians, and later the Kushan Empire. Each empire left its mark, adding layers to the city's identity. By the early centuries of the Common Era, Samarkand had become a major center of Buddhism, Zoroastrianism, and later, early forms of Christianity. This religious diversity reflected the city's role as a cultural crossroads, but history is never stable. In the 7th and 8th centuries CE, a new force arrived, the Arab armies. With the spread of Islam, Samarkand gradually became part of the Islamic world. This transition was not immediate, but over time, Islamic culture and architecture began to shape the city. Mosques were built, new systems of governance were introduced, and Samarkand became part of a larger Islamic civilization. Yet even during these changes, the spirit of Samarkand remained the same. It was still a city of trade, of culture, of connection. However, the greatest destruction came later. In the early 13th century, the Mongols, led by Genghis Khan, invaded Central Asia. In 1220 C, Samarkand was captured after a brutal siege. The city was devastated. Buildings were destroyed, populations were massacred, and the once thriving center of trade was reduced to ruins. It was one of the darkest moments in the city's history, but Samarkand did not disappear. Slowly, painfully, it began to rebuild. Traders returned, people resettled, life came back to its streets. By the 14th century, Samarkand was no longer at its peak, but it was still alive. Waiting for someone to rise, someone who would not just rebuild the city, but transform it into something even greater than before. And that moment was about to come because soon a man named Timur would arrive and Samarkand would never be the same again. In the vast steppes of Central Asia, where survival depended on strength, loyalty, and strategy, a child was born who would one day shake the world. His name was Timur, known in the West as Tamerlane. He was born in 1336, near the region of Kesh, close to Samarkand. At the time, this land was no longer part of a great empire, but a fragmented territory once ruled by the descendants of Genghis Khan. Power was divided among tribal leaders, and constant conflicts shaped the political landscape. Timur was born into the Barlas tribe, a Turco-Mongol group that had settled in the region after the Mongol invasions. Although not directly descended from Genghis Khan, Timur grew up surrounded by the legacy of Mongol power. From a young age, he was exposed to warfare, horse riding, and the harsh realities of steppe life. But Timur was not just a warrior, he was a strategist. According to historical accounts, he was intelligent, ambitious, and deeply determined to rise above his circumstances. However, his journey was not easy. As a young man, Timur was injured in battle, an injury that left him with a permanent limp. This is how he came to be known as Timur the Lame, or Tamerlane, but what could have been a weakness became part of his legend. Because Timur refused to be defined by his injury, instead, he used it as motivation, a constant reminder that he had to fight harder, think smarter, and lead better than anyone else. In the mid-14th century, Central Asia was in chaos. Rival tribes fought for control, and there was no strong central authority. Timur saw this not as a problem, but as an opportunity. He began forming alliances with local leaders, slowly building his influence. At times, he served under more powerful rulers, learning from them, observing their strengths and weaknesses. But Timur was never meant to follow, he was meant to lead. By the 1360s, Timur had become a key political and military figure in the region. Through a combination of diplomacy, betrayal, and military skill, he eliminated rivals and gained control over large territories. One of the most important turning points came in 1370, when Timur defeated his final major rival and declared himself the supreme ruler of Transoxiana. This moment marked the true beginning of his empire, but Timur did not claim the title of Khan because he lacked direct lineage from Genghis Khan. Instead, he ruled behind a puppet ruler, maintaining the illusion of legitimacy while holding real power himself. It was a clever move, because Timur understood something many rulers did not. Power is not just about strength, it is about perception. With his position secured, Timur turned his attention outward. His ambition was not limited to Central Asia. He wanted more, much more. Over the next few decades, Timur launched a series of military campaigns that would expand his empire across vast regions. He conquered Persia, parts of the Middle East, and even reached into India. In 1398, he invaded Delhi, defeating the Delhi Sultanate and capturing immense wealth. In 1401, he attacked Baghdad, leaving behind destruction that shocked the world. His campaigns were known for their brutality. Entire cities were destroyed, and massive pyramids of skulls were reportedly built as symbols of his power. Timur ruled through fear, but also through vision. Because unlike many conquerors, he did not just destroy. He built, and the center of his vision was Samarkand. After establishing his dominance, Timur made Samarkand the capital of his empire. He saw the city not just as a political center, but as a symbol of his greatness. He wanted Samarkand to reflect his power, to be the most beautiful, most advanced, and most impressive city in the world. So he began bringing artisans, architects, and scholars from across his empire, from Persia, India, and beyond. Some came willingly, others were forced, but all contributed to his dream, a dream of transforming Samarkand into a desert jewel. By the early 15th century, Timur had created one of the largest empires in the world. His influence stretched from Anatolia to India, from the steppes of Central Asia to the Persian Gulf. Yet, despite all his conquests, Samarkand remained his greatest obsession, because for Timur, power was not enough. He wanted immortality, and he believed that through architecture, culture, and legacy he could achieve it. But history has its own plans. In 1405, while preparing for another campaign, this time against China, Timur died. His death marked the beginning of the end for his empire, but his impact did not fade, because what he built in Samarkand would continue to inspire generations. And his story would become one of the most powerful and controversial in history. When Timur made Samarkand the capital of his empire in the late 14th century, he did not just want a city. He wanted a masterpiece, a city so magnificent that it would reflect his power, his vision, and his legacy for centuries to come. At that time, Samarkand was still recovering from the devastation of earlier invasions. It was alive, but far from extraordinary. Timur saw its potential, and he decided to transform it into the greatest city of his era, a shining jewel in the middle of the desert. But building such a city required more than just ambition. It required talent, and Timur knew exactly where to find it. From every land he conquered, Persia, India, Anatolia, and beyond, he brought back the finest artisans, architects, engineers, and craftsmen. Some were invited with promises of wealth and prestige, others were taken by force, but all were given one task: to build the most beautiful city the world had ever seen. Construction began on a massive scale. Entire districts were redesigned, wide avenues were laid out, gardens were planted, and grand structures began to rise from the ground. The architecture of Samarkand became a unique fusion of styles, combining Persian elegance, Islamic geometry, and Central Asian creativity. One of the defining features of this new Samarkand was its color: blue, everywhere blue. Turquoise domes, glazed tiles, and intricate mosaics covered the buildings, reflecting the sky above and giving the city an almost heavenly appearance. These designs were not random. They followed precise geometric patterns, symbolizing order, balance, and the infinite nature of the universe. One of Timur's most ambitious projects was the construction of grand mosques. Among them was the Bibi-Khanum Mosque, built around 1399-1404, which was intended to be one of the largest and most impressive mosques in the Islamic world. Its massive entrance, towering domes, and detailed decorations were meant to inspire awe, not just spiritually, but politically. It was a statement, a message to the world that Samarkand was now the center of power. Timur also focused on creating beautiful gardens and palaces. These were not just places of rest, they were symbols of paradise on earth. Inspired by Persian garden design, these spaces included flowing water, symmetrical layouts, and lush greenery, a stark contrast to the surrounding desert. They represented control over nature, a sign of ultimate power. The city also became a center of knowledge and culture. Scholars, poets, and scientists were brought to Samarkand, turning it into a hub of intellectual activity. Libraries were established, and education was encouraged, creating an environment where ideas could flourish. Trade also played a major role in Samarkand's growth. Located along the Silk Road, the city became a major Arabic, Alif Arabic, Lam Arabic, Ta Arabic, Jim Arabic, Alif Arabic, Rat Arabic, yet hub once again. Goods from China, India, Persia, and Europe flowed through its markets. Silk, spices, precious metals, and artworks filled the bazaars, attracting merchants from across the world. This brought immense wealth to the city, wealth that was reinvested into its development. But behind all this beauty, there was a hidden reality. The resources used to build Samarkand often came from conquest. The labor, in many cases, was forced. Entire populations were relocated to serve Timur's vision. It was a city built not just on creativity, but on control. And yet, the result was undeniable. By the early 15th century, Samarkand had become one of the most magnificent cities in the world. Travelers described it as a place beyond imagination, a city where art, architecture, and culture reached their highest form. Its domes seemed to touch the sky, its walls told stories through patterns and colors, and its streets were filled with life from every corner of the known world. Samarkand was not just a city of its time, it was a vision of eternity, a desert jewel that still shines through the shadows of history. What you think about lets us tell in the comments. If you want more interesting history video, then follow History Rec and don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe.